The goal of this video today is help you design a Reaper template that will let you take advantage of all the features Reaper has to offer. This video will be subjective to how I like to work, but hopefully you can still watch it and see some things that you like and make it work for yourself. So let's take a minute to talk about what my workflow is so you can understand what the goals of my template are. I typically make an instrumental track in another DAW like FL Studio. I'll then export the WAV files from FL and import them into Reaper. From there I'll do all my recording and mixing in Reaper. This is a pretty standard hip-hop workflow and is immediately simpler than how complex others' workflow can be, but hopefully you can still watch this video and get something out of it. So a template should meet a few basic design criterion. The first thing is it should make you more efficient. Designing a template should allow you to use all the features we love about Reaper much more quickly. The second is that it keeps you organized. Organization is a pain that we take on at the beginning of a project to minimize it later on. If you ever worked on a large project, you know that it is very easy to become disorganized. And the third thing is it should be flexible. No two projects are exactly alike, so what's the right template? The right template will allow you to change things easily enough so that you can take advantage of our other two design criterion, efficiency and organization. So let's start with an empty Reaper project. The first major feature of Reaper we will utilize is their folder system. If you are unfamiliar with the folder system, I suggest you look it up. It's a great feature for controlling the routing of your tracks. However, the main power of folders for me is their organization structure. From your empty project, go to Insert Multiple Tracks and add 3 new tracks. These tracks will act as the root folders of our project. Change the name by double-clicking on the text box. The first track I will label as VCAs, the next beat, and the last vocals. The VCAs folder is what it sounds like, VCA faders. I keep those in their own folder. The next is the beat folder. This folder will contain the WAV files of the instrumental I'll be recording to. This will be things like drums, instruments, and sound effects. The last folder is the vocals folder, and this is where I'll put all the vocals I record into the project. You can customize these tracks by changing their look. Select all the tracks by holding Shift and clicking on all the tracks, or you can hold Shift and click the first and the last track. Once these tracks are selected, right-click on one of them and go to Track Layout and go to Track Panel and select one of the many options. I've selected Spacer 1 from the options. Doing this lets you distinguish the root folder easily. The first of these folders we will mess with is the Beats folder. Click on the track and go to Insert Multiple Tracks. This time we will add 6 tracks. 3 of these will be folders and the other 3 will be audio tracks. Click on the folder icon on the Beat folder to turn it into a folder. Now everything below that track will be inside the Beat folder. Set the last of newly added tracks as the last track by double-clicking on the folder icon. Now you should have 6 tracks inside the Beat folder. The next step is to organize the folder. I will label the first folder Drums, the next IFX, short for Instruments and Effects, and the last Sends. You can also customize the layout of these tracks. I set them to Spacer 1 as well. Now one by one, enable the folder icon and add the unlabeled tracks to the folder. Be sure to set the track you add as the last folder. Now you should have 3 folders and a track in each of those folders. You can make different folders if you like, such as maybe a dedicated folder for bass or whatever else you like. Feel free to make as many or as few as you want. Now you might be thinking, won't we need more tracks than this? You're right. What we are doing is creating one ideal track for each category, one that is configured exactly the way we need it. What you can do later is duplicate this track so you can have as many pre-configured tracks as you need. We will demonstrate this later. I like to change the colors on these tracks to help me stay organized. I will shift and click on the drums folder and the track. Then I will right click and go to Track Color, Set Custom Color, and set these tracks to blue, or you can pick whatever color you want. I will make the IFX tracks yellow and the Send tracks purple. The next step is optional, but I find it really useful. Right click on the audio track in the drums folder and select Track Time Base and change it to time. I will go ahead and set the time base to time for the IFX audio track as well. What this does is that when you add WAV files to your Reaper project, it won't stretch or compress your tracks if you change the project's BPM. I like to do this since I often forget to set the BPM when I start adding in tracks. If you plan on recording MIDI to your tracks, do not do this. The next thing to do is to hook up each of our tracks to the one send track. From the send box on the track, it will be the box with the M, S, and R in it. Click, hold, drag out, and drop that icon on the send box on the actual send track. Do this for the drums and IFX tracks. Once that's done, click on the send box on the send track to open the options window. Mute both of these sends that you just configured. Now you have both tracks connected to the send. Setting this up has 2 distinct advantages. First, whenever you create a new track in your drums or IFX folder, this new track will be automatically connected to the send track. It will also be muted, so you don't have to worry about that either. When you create a new send track, it will automatically receive from the audio tracks. Pretty cool. Makes making new send tracks a breeze, and you can turn them on simply by unmuting the send on the audio track. Now there's only one thing left to do in the beat folder, which is to create the VCAs to control the tracks. But before we do that, we have to configure the VCA's root folder. Start out by adding 3 new tracks to the VCA folder. I will label these tracks drums, IFX, and vocals. The drums VCA will control all the drums audio tracks. IFX will do the same except for the IFX audio tracks. Vocals, same thing, except that will be configured a little differently than the others, but we'll worry about that a little later. For each of these, repeat the same process. Right click on the track and go to track grouping parameters. This will open up a window that has a bunch of checkboxes in it. Start out at the top and create a new group by selecting one of the unused group. Group 1 should be the first one, and rename it to match the name on the VCA. So if you're configuring the drums VCA, just call it drums, etc. After the group is created, check the boxes VCA lead, mute lead, solo lead. This VCA will be able to control the volume as well as solo and mute the group it controls. Once you have the 3 VCAs, you can change the color on them if you like. For the time being, I will not change the track layout. So we have 3 VCAs, but they still don't control anything. Let's change that. For the time being, I will only configure the drums and IFX VCAs, and save the vocals one for when I work on that folder. For the drums audio track, right click on it and go to track grouping parameters. On the drums audio track, make sure you are in the drums group by selecting the box at the top of the window. Once that's set, just click on the checkboxes VCA follow, mute follow, solo follow. Now your drums VCA is set. Repeat this process for the IFX track. The benefit of pre-configuring the VCA like this is now that when you duplicate these tracks, the new ones will be also set to the VCA. Now let's move on to the vocals folder. We are going to configure this folder a little bit differently than we did the beats folder. The big difference here is that we will actually be recording this folder, not dropping in audio tracks. First, let's start out by setting up the folder structure and then discuss why. Start out by adding 4 tracks to the folder. 2 of these will be folder tracks and the other 2 will be audio tracks. So make the 2 folders and stick 1 track in each. I'll leave the first folder unlabeled and I'll label the second one sends. The sends folder is what it sounds like, it's for the sends. Now what about the first folder? The first folder will be a folder that we record vocals into. We record onto the audio track, but we'll not put any effects on this track. Instead, we will put effects on the folder itself because folders are still tracks at the end of the day. The benefit of this is that you can have multiple takes and sections, still have them routed through the same effects chain. For instance, let's say you need to record a verse and a hook for a song. Both of these will have the same mix and effects. So when you record, make 2 separate tracks in the folder and record each section to the tracks. Then you have the 2 tracks with the same effects chain. This is especially helpful during recording because often the vocalists will want to hear their voice with some effects on it, such as tuning or delay. Now you only have to set those effects once and did it without any complicated routing, like you would have to do with maybe some other DAWs. This folder doesn't have to be the only one you record to either. You can make multiple of these folders. I'll usually just have one for main vocals such as hooks and verses, another for ad-libs because I do a lot of hip-hop stuff, and another for harmonies. When you want to create another one of these folders, just duplicate the track in the folder by holding shift and clicking both, right click and then choose duplicate. Before you do that however, let's go ahead and configure the generic folder. The next few steps are optional. Right click on the audio track in the generic folder and set the time base to time. I like to turn off the record monitoring on the tracks, and I go ahead and make sure the track is record enabled by checking the inputs. It's a good time to troubleshoot your interface if you haven't yet. Now let's set up the routing in the VCA. Drag from the routing box in the generic folder to send to the audio track, then mute the send. Right click on the generic folder and go to track grouping parameters and add it to the vocals group. Check the VCA follow, VCA mute follow, VCA solo follow. Now when you duplicate this track, everything will be pre-configured ahead of time. Now I want to do some customization to the mixing panel, but before I do that, I want to hide some tracks in both of these panels. Right click on any of the tracks and select Track Manager, Show Hide Tracks. Using this window you can hide the tracks in the mixing panel and the track panel. On the track panel I hide all the VCAs and hide the send folders and tracks. These are things I don't mess with on the track panel, so I don't like to keep them there. This is totally optional though, you do you. I also hide all the vocal audio tracks from the mixing panel since I don't want to do mixing on those tracks, just the folder. What I'll be doing with the mixing panel is purely cosmetic. I'll be changing some of the track layouts so they are more pleasing to the eye. To do this, just right click on a track and go to Track Layout and go to Mixer Panel and select one of the options. Here are the options I chose. For the VCA root folder, I select Strip Name. For the beat and vocals root folder, I select Strip Meter. For the drums and IFX folder, I select Strip Meter as well. Basically, I use strip name for stuff that I don't need to see the peak meter on, and then I use strip meter for things that I do. Again, this is all just to my taste, so you do you. figure out whichever ones you like best. For the VCA tracks, I select VCA Narrow. For the drums and IFX audio tracks, I select Sidebar. For the vocals generic folder, I select Sidebar as well. For both send folders, I select the strip name, and then for all the send tracks, I select FX Rack. And that's pretty much how you set up the template. You can optionally add any effects that you may want ahead of time, such as delays or compressors, to these effects channels, but when you're done, you can just go to File, Project Templates, Save Project as Template. Once you save it, you can open a new project by going back to File, Project Templates, and selecting your template. And that's the end of this tutorial. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe. I don't need to give you the speech. And if you have any comments or questions about this tutorial or about Reaper templates in general, you can leave those in the comments. Thanks for watching.